Please welcome on stage for me Dr. Thomas Hendricks. Thomas, warm welcome to you.
Hi, thank you.
First of all, thank you so much for bringing this film to Munich for the German premiere. Please give our congratulations also on behalf of the team to Sammy and the whole team. This is really an amazing film essay, and you did the last part of the film, the Lilico, and you are, by your studies, a forest engineer. Come a bit closer to me. And also a cultural anthropologist. So you are a researcher. Maybe you tell us a bit how you met Sammy, or how did Sammy find you?
Yeah, okay. So thank you very much for inviting me, and it's very nice to be here. I know Sammy for a long time already, but we never actually worked together. And then when he came up with the idea of making a film about Congolese rainforest, he contacted me because he also knew my work and a book that I had written about.
Oh, I forgot to mention the book.
No, no problem.
Say
it's
Rainforest Capital.
It's called Rainforest Capitalism. So it's an anthropological study of a Congolese logging concession, so a timber firm that is cutting down some of the rainforest in the center of the Congo. And so when Sami was making this movie, he contacted me to write the last part of the film, so only the epilogue. So my contribution is actually very small in comparison to other people who have worked much
small
harder,
but important.
Much harder on the film. So it's only the epilogue where the tree of authenticity kind of speaks, or is supposed to speak, and kind of pulls together some of the threads that we have seen in the previous parts of the film, and then comes up with some questions for the audience, I think. Maybe some unfamiliar questions also about a tree that is somehow resisting also the expectations that we as humans might have of trees and forests as those who will save us or might save us from climate emergency, climate crisis. So the tree is quite ambivalent about that. He is feeling measured again, monitored again, maybe exploited again. This particular tree species, also the seeds of that tree are used in new plantation experiments to plant, because it's a very fast-growing tree, and the wood is also very dense, so it stocks a lot of carbon. So again, we see a kind of a new reiteration of a new kind of plantation model that has a long history in Congo. So I think the film tries to really bring into the discussion this long history of colonialism, also when it comes to the present day and our fight against climate change, global warming. Yeah,
this is actually the next question I would have had. That it's a very kind of intelligent way to make the art from the colonial past to nowadays, and in how it's still kind of post-colonial. So maybe you can elaborate a little bit on that. Was that also part of the writing, and was that the idea from the beginning, or did it just come in the end?
It was not the idea from the beginning. We wanted to do something about the present day and the climate, but we didn't know how to do it. So the idea of having this tree speak just was something that came up in the discussion between me and Sami. And because the tree is more than 300 years old, he has seen or experienced a longer history, even before Paul Panda Fernana, before the Belgians actually came to the Congo. So he can speak for a long time. Yeah.
It's very rarely actually that nature has a voice. And also in documentary films, I mean, also in ethnology, the science of ethnography. No, how do you say ethnology?
Or anthropology. Yeah.
Anthropology. Yeah. So that animals and nature and they don't have a voice. So that you gave them a voice is also an act of kind of empowerment, so to say.
Yeah, it was not easy to do, because as soon as you imagine a tree speaking, you always end up humanizing a tree. Like, a tree doesn't speak a human language. It doesn't. Trees communicate in chemical substances, in reactions, in physical reactions. So if we want to translate something that we can call tree speech into a human language, you always inevitably end up humanizing the tree.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so it's a kind of anthropomorphism. You act or you write as if the tree would be a human speaking, and thereby you lose a lot of the radical otherness of trees or of plants. But
which we probably don't understand even.
We don't understand. I mean, there are different ways to understand it. Scientists do understand trees, when the communication of trees, by measuring the things. But if you translate it into a language, you always end up humanizing, personifying, individualizing a tree. But I think we do it in a strategic way, because what the tree actually says, it's a fiction. The tree is not saying this. It's me writing the text and then having a sound artist making the sound of the tree based on actual recordings within wood. But it's a fiction. But the message that the tree gives is a message, I think, that kind of decenters anthropocentrism. So we can't go away from anthropomorphism, but we can get away a little bit from anthropocentrism, because the tree kind of criticizes humanity's quest for control and the hubris also.
Absolutely, very beautiful. You just touched on the sound and the soundscapes. I think this is very impressive, and even more in the cinema and on the big screen. So it's for me the first time to see it in the cinema, so it was even more impressive. You worked with a British sound artist, Chris Watson, and maybe you can tell us a bit, did you also interact or create the scenes together with Sammy, or was he working on his own, or how did it go?
We didn't interact directly, so I just delivered my text, and then he, on the basis of the text, made the soundscape, the sound art. And then the idea that really came very late in the film was to actually also start with the tree is the end, but you can hear the tree already speaking at the very beginning of the film. When we see this Guardian newspaper article, a lot of text, you already hear the tree murmuring.
So it's kind of the
speaking.
bracket.
So actually the tree speaks all along the film.
Yeah. Are there already some questions in the audience? Yeah, here in front.
I'm interested in the sound of the film, because it's very dominant. And can you tell me what it means? It's the work of the land to destroy the trees?
It's a soundscape based on.
Yeah, I can repeat. But also have a mic, maybe for the next question. So the question was regarding the sound again, and the lady thinks it was very dominant. And maybe you can explain a little bit more about it.
I can't speak for Sami and his decision to make it a dominant presence in the film, but so the sound is based on actual recordings that are made within wood, within living trees. You hear sap and bubbles and crackings, and you hear the movement of the trees also move when there is a wind. So it's based on actual tree sounds, but then it's of course transformed and heavily processed to make it into a kind of a soundscape. No, there were not machines. No. It was actually sound inside the tree trunk. And I think it's dominating because that's actually what is dominating. It's the film is about the forest. The forest is the main character. And we have two scientists before, Bob van der Farnana and Abiram Beinart, and they die. The tree is still there, was there before them, is still there, yeah.
But there are not sound of animals.
There are no sounds of animals. There is a lot of bird song.
Ich glaube, die letzte Reihe hat da Schwierigkeiten.
Aber
Yeah.
sag nicht mehr.
As the lady was asking if there are more sounds, there are no sounds of animals. So that was the question. But I think there are.
There are a lot of bird song in the film, but the tree's voice is not based on the bird songs. It's really based on only the recordings made in the tree trunks.
Are there more questions? Yeah, over there. So please wait for the mic this time.
Hi, congratulations on the film. My question was about the time periods that the film covers, because it's obviously very interesting to get this documentation of the former scientists who had been working on this site. And then there's a jump after the 50s. We see images of people in the present day, but we never hear from them, or even from what happens, after the 1950s, from independence onward. And I wondered what kind of choice was involved in that, in creating that kind of temporal gap between where we leave off with the letter writing and then speaking to the tree.
Yeah, again, I cannot speak for the directors, so this is just my personal take on it. All the images we see from the very beginning are images that are from the present day. So there is always this kind of temporal gap between what we see and what we hear about. And the two stories that have been chosen to be foregrounded are two stories set in around the First World War, and the second in the Second World War. And it's true that there is no kind of third voice that speaks for, let's say, post-colonial Congo, what happens after the 1950s, independence, Lumumba, and everything that went that went on afterwards. But the tree is actually speaking a little bit about that when he talks about the President Mobutu, who that's actually also the title of the entire film, is Tree of Authenticity. Mobutu in the 1970s wanted to get rid of all the legacies of Belgian colonialism, and he invented a whole program called Zaïranisation. That's also when the name of the country changed from Congo to Zaire. Now it's Congo again. And during this Zaïranization campaign, it was based on an ideology of authenticity, going back to authentically African, quote-unquote, African values. And that's when this particular tree was erected by the President Mobutu as the Tree of Authenticity, as a kind of a new symbol for authentic African ancestral values, and was just mobilized, instrumentalized again in a new political discourse, as he had been during the Belgian colonial days, as a tree of the king, the Belgian king. So that's, I think, where post-colonial presence is most directly visible in the film.
This particular tree, I just want to make sure I understood. Is it that type of tree or that actual tree?
That actual tree.
Wow.
So,
okay.
So you have most of the film, the images are shot in Yangambi research station, and next to Yangambi you have a forest reserve, and this tree is this big majestic tree that is there, and it became kind of a tourist site. So everybody who visits Yangambi also goes and has a picnic at the foot of the tree. And so there are a lot of stories told about the role of that tree, and visitors coming from far away, Belgians, but everybody, and also still until today, Congolese ministers visiting that tree. So it's a very well-known tree in a sense.
Are there more questions? Yeah.
Thank you. I really appreciated your creation of a voice for the tree. But my question is, did Sammy have, right from the beginning, did he really want to give a climate focus to the film, or was it more about colonialism, or how did he, when and how did he make that connection?
Again, I can't speak for him, but as far as I know, climate has always been there from the beginning. The entire oeuvre of Sami is always about colonialism and working with colonial archival material and how colonialism is still affecting present-day realities. And he wanted to make a film about the equator, actually. That was the first idea, the equator, the line. And so he wanted to make a film about the equatorial rainforest. And climate was there from the beginning, but the way he wove it together was just something that came out of the process, I think. But as far as I know, climate was there from the very beginning. Yeah. But it's only one part of the entire story. The film is about much more than just climate.
Yeah. Isn't it also about what I read, but you may correct me, about these rainforests and their role in the global climate mitigation, so to say the Amazonas, everybody's talking or knows about the Amazonas, but little is known about the rainforests of the Congo. So, and they're even bigger, and I think second in absorption of carbon after the Amazonas. So, wasn't that also a point of doing that film and raise awareness about that? Or?
Yeah, so the Congolese rainforest once again becomes something important of global interest.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very unknown. So in comparison to the Amazonian rainforest, there is very little data about the Congolese, the rainforest in the Congo basin. So not just Congo, but the other countries around. And so there is a new rush, actually, a scientific rush for getting the data. That's also why we have the very first part of the film is this Guardian article that talks about a Belgian scientist going to Yangambi, trying to build a tower, failing to build the tower, and then stumbling upon this archive of old observations, meteorological observations, but also observations about tree behavior. And he then digitalized or had these data digitalized to build a model to predict the future of the rainforest in respect to climate change. So once again, the work that Congolese people, unnamed, anonymous Congolese people have done in the 1920s and 30s is being used, is being valorized in a new rush for value, for information, for predictions, for modeling. And these people were unnamed, very difficult to find their names, but then Sami makes a link with Paul Pandafernana, who was actually one of the people who directed a similar meteorological research station, and that's why we hear all these meteorological recordings in the beginning.
Yeah, and I think we talked about it already, that kind of the foundations of a colonial research station and the results and data they were collecting now in post-colonial times. Again, researchers are working with this data and also gives us thought how we work with this data and how we work with these people and how we talk with or about them. So, yeah, you said there's a lot of excitement, but are there also dangers that we tap again into this same mistakes that were being done in the colonial times?
Yeah, I think so. Actually, if you read the Guardian article and also the things that Sami highlighted in the article, it's full of old colonial cliches about the Congo as this unknown territory, rich forest, in decay, in ruins, that has to be rediscovered, revalorized. So I think the film offers a subtle, not a direct and open critique of something that is actually very useful and very necessary and urgent today. But it shows how the link between colonialism and climate change is not just that colonialism as part of capitalism is a big motor in setting off the crisis we find ourselves today in, but also that structures of coloniality tend to be reproduced sometimes in climate science, in climate discourse, that we have to be careful and to always ask ourselves the question, whose labor is being exploited, who wins, who loses, and that these questions will always be with us, I think.
Absolutely. Are there more questions in the audience? No. Maybe then one last from my side. We also will continue the conversation this afternoon, also talking about the colonial legacies in connection to climate change and also about climate justice. So maybe to raise interest and to attend the conversation, you could say something. What do you think in terms of climate justice then would be important to be aware of at the moment regarding also the people of Congo?
Yeah, like I just said, if you want to have climate justice, it should be justice for everyone, also for the people living in these forests. And for instance, if you look at just one example, carbon credits, like there is a whole market for carbon credits, Western companies, Western countries, Western institutions buying credits to to compensate for their carbon emissions, and these credits partially come from projects in the global south where people, by not cutting down trees, sell credits. Or that's the intention. It's called the RED program, reducing emission from deforestation and forest degradation. So it's a system set up by the United Nations and by other parties. And in the Congo, they are working towards that. So what you end up having is projects in the Congolese rainforest that try to convince small farmers from cutting down the trees in order to produce credits for Western companies to buy. So you can say a lot about this, but there is again a risk of having a structure of coloniality again there, where you try to convince the poor Congolese farmer as the supposedly actor of something wrong to offset for a very, very big, much bigger wrong that is being done by Western companies.
Absolutely, yeah. And I just read that the importance of the rainforests were recognized by European countries also at the COP26, and they were committing 1.5 billion to protect these iconic landscapes, so to say. So it's also something on the political agenda on the international level. What does that mean now for the people in the Congo? Or, yeah, maybe you know something about that.
Whenever there is a lot of money flowing in, there will be a lot of political struggle and corruption, as far as I know, the Congo. And people who actually live in the forest tend to be not the beneficiaries of this money. So, yeah, but I don't know what's going to happen with this money this time. But I'm very skeptical about these kind of initiatives, because protecting the forest, it sounds great, but protecting against whom? And
for whom?
Or for whom? Yeah.
And by whom?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So these are all questions that in Congo are very complicated. And for instance, it's much easier to say we're protecting a forest from poor farmers than protecting a forest from big industrial loggers, for instance. Yeah.
Absolutely. So talking about rainforest capitalism again. Thank you so much, Thomas.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah. So round of applause for Thomas and the Tree of Authenticity.